There are plenty of big picture decisions on the line for the Philadelphia Phillies this offseason as they seek to get over the World Series hump. But at the top of the list, in most interesting conversations, is the future of JT Realmuto, whose market is reportedly heating up. I do want to break down the latest on what JT's contract outlook is, why this is a bit of a unique decision for the Phillies directly, and what their options could be beyond just JT Realmuto at the catcher spot. This has been a guy who's been crowned the best catcher in baseball for stretches, who certainly did his job for this Phillies team last year, and I think proved he had more left in the tank than I personally gave him credit. But does that mean that you were signing on to give a 35-year-old plus catcher a multi-year deal? That is the question that the Phillies need to address themselves and may have a bit of a rush to do so, as we got this latest report coming in coming from Matt Gelb originally here that says, quote, "It might be uncomfortable territory for the Phillies, but JT Realmuto could have enough interest to secure a 3-year deal. Sounds like there is more teams interested in JT rather than Schwarber. Not that JT will get more money, but it sounds like there will be more competition." And to give the full context of that quote here, did want to pull up this portion from Alex Call, who also comes from the Matt Gelb report. It says, quote, "Some rival executives expect Realmuto to draw more free agent interest this winter than Kyle Schwarber. That's not to suggest Realmuto will receive a larger deal than Schwarber. He won't. But the sheer number of teams interested in Realmuto could boost his market." Now, again, to be clear, this is not saying JT Realmuto is remotely worth more to a baseball team than Kyle Schwarber. But what that does mean is there will be a more competitive market, which ends up inflating the cost to an extent. Now, to put the JT Realmuto conversation on full display, that he's coming off an age 34 season in which he hit 12 home runs, 52 RBIs, a .315 on-base percentage, had 502 at-bats, touted 129 hits across that, also struck out 129 times, a .384 slugging percentage there. JT Realmuto is not what he once was, and what he once was the clear-cut best catcher in baseball. But when push comes to shove, I see no alternative to bringing him back to Philadelphia. And the reason that I say that, number one, is beyond just the raw stats and the numbers that I just put on display here. The strength of this Phillies team has shifted to the pitching staff, and especially when you factor in things like Andrew Painter set to make his debut next year. Christopher Sanchez has had all this success alongside JT Realmuto there. You have Aaron Nola. You have Zack Wheeler coming back at some point and to some extent here. You need a guy that can control these options, and I don't feel great about the shakeup that it would bring down if those are the alternatives. Now, to take a peek and walk through the exercise of why this may be the case or what the alternative options the Phillies are weighing are, I do want to pull up this article from On Patterson. Shout out to Tim Kelly, who does an awesome job sort of sorting through what could the replacement options be. And the option number one that he writes up is scenario one, try to replace Realmuto internally. And he writes, in his first full season as Realmuto's primary backup, Rafael Marchand hit just .210. However, he received only 105 at-bats, and Rob Thomson, who will be back in 2026, called him a, quote, tireless preparer, and added that, quote, for that job, he's had a really, really good year in September. The question is whether the Phillies believe in Marchand, 26, has the ceiling of being a starter or that they think he's best suited to be a backup. It is worth noting that Marchand stayed healthy as a backup in 2025, but struggled with injuries as a minor leaguer when he played regularly. In this scenario, Marchand will be the starter, with Garrett Stubbs serving as his backup. Stubbs returned to the Phillies in September after spending the majority of the 25 season with AAA Lehigh Valley. Stubbs did hit 8 home runs with 50 RBIs for the Iron Pigs this season and has a pretty extensive MLB experience prior to that. But for as well-respected as Stubbs is, it's hard to see the Phillies going from having Realmuto play 6 out of 7 games to a tandem of Marchand and Stubbs in 2026. And to interject here, I don't see anywhere where this is the decision that is made. I think it's a bit telling, more so than anything, that the Phillies went into the season with the belief and the public belief that they put on display that we are going to allow for a little bit less wear and tear on JT, that we're going to make a conscious effort to give this guy off days, give Rafael Marchand an opportunity to earn himself an MLB role, and that just did not happen. That when the dust settled this season, when push came to shove, JT Realmuto caught more innings than anyone else in baseball, and that's been the norm for him. That was the way the direction went, and ultimately, I was fine. I was satisfied with the production level that we got from JT, but I don't think that was a glowing indictment on the belief on Rafael Marchand. I don't think a team with legitimate World Series aspirations, as will be the case next season once again with this Phillies team, can rightfully roll out a catcher duo of Rafael Marchand and Garrett Stubbs. I just don't see a world where that works out or has enough production on either side of the ball, defensively or at the plate there, to have a legitimate case for that being an asset to this team. So let's take a peek at option 2 that Tim Kelly writes up here, and he says for option 2 specifically, trade for Adley Rutschman here, and this has been the hot name on the market. And he writes, when the Phillies acquired Realmuto from the Miami Marlins prior to the 2019 season, he was entering his age 28 season and had 2 remaining years of arbitration eligibility before re-agency. Rutschman is in that exact same situation now. Granted, Realmuto was coming off a career year in 2018 with the Fish, while Rutschman's stock has plummeted. Not only did Rutschman hit just .220 with his .673 OPS, which is not great whatsoever, over 90 games this past season, but he hit .207 with a .585 OPS after the 2024 All-Star break. So in his most recent year and a half, Rutschman has been a bad player. With that said, he was an all-star in the first half of 2024, which followed him finishing runner-up with the AL Rookie of the Year voting in 2022 and 9th in the Junior Circuit MVP race in 2023. Forget just catchers. It wasn't that long ago that Rutschman seemed prized to be one of the faces of the sport. There would definitely be a risk in trading for Rutschman. First of all, Mike Elias and the Orioles are still going to expect a pretty decent prospect capital in return for him. Secondly, maybe he's this era's Matt Whiters and goes from looking like a superstar for the O's early in his career to just kind of being a guy. But if you're looking for the highest upside play, that also allows you to get younger and cheaper in 2026. Rutschman would be the wisest gamble. This is a dude who it seems pretty certain is going to be traded. It's just a question of where and what that return will look like. I don't feel incredibly confident giving up a strong pool of prospects for him to be the long-term solution there. There's a world where he gets right back on the same path and looks like the potential star that he was budding to be, but we have not seen that version of Adley Rutschman in over a year to this point, over a calendar year, really a year and a half since he's looked like that. Maybe a change of scenery fixes things, and I think with Philadelphia specifically, we kind of see one thing or the other, that guys can either grow and thrive under the high-pressure environment where there are expectations, or they can will, and we've seen both of these things been put on display. I still feel better about what I know JT Realmuto is going to get you than what I hope Adley Rutschman could. But to continue on and lay out another alternative here that Tim Kelly writes up, sign a free agent to pair with Marchand. And this is one that I could see being the direction here. And he writes, one of the reasons it appears Realmuto is certain to get at least 2 years and could push for 3 guaranteed is that there are so few impact catchers in the sport. Even as he enters his 13th season, Realmuto still looks, by far, the likes of the top option on the free agent market. That doesn't necessarily mean, though, that the Phillies have to meet Realmuto's demands. It might be wiser to just take a step back in the position, even if it makes you worse, to open 2026. At the same time, even with all the uncertainty around the Phillies this minute, they are going to be a veteran-heavy squad that enters the 2026 with World Series aspirations. Maybe Marchand will take on a bigger role next season, but you would feel much better about it if that comes with a strong partner. Victor Caratini graded out poorly behind the plate for the Houston Astros this past season, -5 defensive run saves and -2.6 framing grade, but also is a switch hitter who homered 12 times and drove in 46 runs. The options after that aren't great. Danny Jansen, Thomas Nido, Jacob Stallings, Ellis Diaz, Christian Vasquez, and Austin Hedges all could potentially be free agents this offseason. It's possible a couple of these guys could be signed to minor league deals with an invite to spring training to compete with Stubbs for a roster spot. The bottom line is that if you go to the free agent route to replace Realmuto, you're putting a ton of trust in Marchand. And I think a great portion of this conversation circles back to what is that level of trust in Rafael Marchand. And my gut feeling, despite what is being said publicly by the organization, is that feeling is not all that high. That I think he's a fine player, a guy that could serve a role in the major leagues, but I don't see a world where Rafael Marchand takes this unforeseen leap and is all of a sudden the everyday catcher in the way that the Phillies really need him to be in this situation for things to work out. The reason that I think this is a possibility is purely comes down to cost. And I do think we should put a reminder here that JT Realmuto, in his contract extension that he did sign with the Phillies here, a 5-year, $115.5 million deal, he was the highest paid catcher in all of baseball. I'm not comfortable giving him that level of contract, but the market feels like it's going to point to that direction. this now shifts in the conversation of prioritizing the pool of money. Is it giving it all to Kyle Schwarber? Is it bringing back JT Realmuto, checking some smaller boxes? They're going to have to crunch numbers in a way that isn't the best outlook for a team. And I understand there's no salary cap really in baseball, that the owners can spend theoretically how much as they want, but there are restrictions that come with that for what it brings to your franchise, and I do think the Phillies are very cognizant of that. There's a reason that they were not big spenders last year. It does seem like they are trending towards being willing more this offseason, but I need to see it a bit. The JT Realmuto outlook, a bit more complicated than I would prefer to be the case. But anything I land on here, I think the best route for actually improving the franchise is with him still involved in the entire process here. He may not be what he once was, but JT Realmuto is still a damn good catcher that's done quite well in red pinstripes there. I hope that continues to be the case in 2026, but the Phillies sound like they're going to have to come to the table with a strong offer for that to be the case. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Are you still all in on JT Realmuto returning to this team? That is the direction that I certainly lean and do hope happens, but it is more complicated than I would prefer be the case. So drop those thoughts below. Appreciate you guys tuning into this video here. If you have not already, make sure you're smashing the subscribe to us right here on Phillies Digest. I know it is the offseason, but we're going to continue plugging away content. There's going to be a lot breaking in the coming weeks in regards to the future of some of these notable players, and we're going to be all over it on the channel. So make sure you're hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like on this video here, giving your comments below, and I'll be back to talk with you next time. Peace.